Okay, it is noon here on the East Coast, so we're going to get started. Um, I've been given the task of welcoming you all to our first TEDx SNHU Salon. My name's Kyle Viator. I'm one of the co-organizers for the TEDx SNHU event that we hold on campus. It's a collaboration between our on-campus and online divisions at Southern New Hampshire University and sponsored by the Ethics Council that exists over in our global campus. So we're happy to welcome you all here. This is our first TEDx SNHU Salon. A salon is an event to bring the community together, usually on a smaller scale, between the events that we hold formally in person, so that we can reconnect about ideas that we've had in the past, reconnect with old speakers that we've had at TEDx SNHU, and keep some of the ideas moving forward. So with that, I'd like to pass it over to our other co-lead organizer, Matt DePiro, to keep the program going. Matt?
Thanks, Kyle. Hi, everybody. I'm Matt DePiro. I'm the other co-organizer of the TEDx SNHU event. You may remember Kyle and my smiling faces from the live stream, or if you were able to attend in person, we welcome you back. Um, yes, as Kyle said, this is our first salon event. We have a couple more on the schedule for the next 2 months, so please keep your eye out for more information about our next salon in May. That will be featuring Dr. Kendra Thomas and Shaprice Pennington Willis. And in June, we will be hosting another salon event with Jada Hebra. So very excited about those. We have welcoming to the stage here today as our moderator, Pam Boutsellis, Senior Content Director at SNHU, and one of our organizers of the TEDx SNHU and TEDx Amiskig Milliard events each year. And I also have the pleasure of introducing our guest today. Bancroft C. Daley is an alum of Southern New Hampshire University and has a record-breaking TEDx talk with over 30,000 views to date. At SNHU, he was best known for his public speaking workshops as a diversity agent in pursuit of racial equity. Currently, a Teach for America Corps member and high school mathematics teacher at the School District of Philadelphia, Bancroft continues to shape young lives parallel to his own in the name of racial justice. So join me, please, in welcoming Bancroft.
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me here. It's such a pleasure. I would like to start by thanking you all for having me come on as the first salon and being the first presenter to be with everybody and kind of set the tone of things. And before we get started, I would like to thank my school family, TS25, the Sour Patch Kids, the Cold Kids, and Team Free for tuning in today and making sure that they give me the support and the unconditional love that they've given me all year. Thank you so much.
I'm delighted that you're here today. Bancroft, just before we went live, we were discussing, we met quite a few years ago, might have been 2018, 2019, when you were still a student here at Southern New Hampshire University. And I had the pleasure of meeting you briefly and interviewing you for an article I was writing at that time. And one of the things I mentioned, when you do meet someone, sometimes it's a chance meeting, and sometimes, although it's brief, something sticks out. And for me, I always try to remember the people that really stand out, and you being one. And when TEDx SNHU first came about 3 years ago, and it was time to nominate folks, you were top of my list. And I conferred with a few people that I knew had engaged with you during your time here, both on campus and folks on our online division, and all were in support of nominating you. And not only were you nominated, but I had the pleasure of, once you were selected, being your speaker coach. But I want you to think back. Think back to when you received the news. You were nominated as a potential TEDxSNHU speaker. Once the initial shock wore off, how did you decide what topic to focus on in your nomination information that you were sharing with us in your application?
Yes, so it was tough. Um, as a diversity agent, when I was on campus and I was a student, a lot of my speeches were in regard to DEI work, diversity work, racial equity, social justice. Um, and I think my initial thought was that I would continue with that legacy as being somebody who was on campus and known for diversity work, to now be on this main stage and continue talking about that. Um, but then I started thinking to myself, I've done so many different speeches, so many different workshops, and all of them were connected to my identity, in ways of which I show up in society and how people see me, and also how the global politics of things sees individuals. Um, but I thought that this is a moment for me to talk about an aspect of my life that has always been on my mind, has always been a burden. Um, I chose this specific topic, um, you know, is the club worth the price? Because it spanned through many different sections of my life. Um, as a kid, I had to deal with this. As a teenager, I had to deal with this. And then as an adult, I had to deal with this of being somebody who wants to be socially accepted, somebody who wants to and understands what it feels like to be outcasted and what it takes to be put back into an environment, and also self-esteem, right? Self-doubt, figuring out who I was as an individual. Um, I wanted something that was timeless. I wanted to create a story and depict the story of my life that was timeless. I wanted people to be able to see this 10 years from now and say, that's how I feel today, and I still resonate with that feeling.
Yeah, and I think it's a universal feeling too. And not surprising that your talk has really resonated with so many people. I know we had mentioned in the beginning, you've had over 30,000 views. Now it's over 31,000, which is fantastic. And I have no doubt it'll keep climbing. But the idea that, I think we all try to fit in some capacity and try to figure out what do I need to do to fit in. And you really ask such an important question in which you're saying, what's the cost I'm going to pay to fit in? And is it really worth it? And I love that. And obviously others do as well. So I'm going to ask you to continue thinking back. What did that feel like when you found out you were selected as a speaker?
For me, the best way that I can explain it was that it felt like draft day, right? I spent my entire life preparing for something big like this to happen, and this is my opportunity to be on this main stage. And it really felt like I was being drafted in the pro league, which in so many ways it was, right? I started my public speaking journey as a young kid in the church. There was a Sunday that, my mom had said, hey, we're going to go to church one day. We're going to go to church today. And so get yourself together. We got to be there by 10. We get in the car. When we get into the car, she goes, I want you to speak a Bible verse at church. The church was Bethel AME in Norwalk, Connecticut. And I think at that time I was a very misunderstood kid. But even still then, right, I wanted to prove myself to my family. I wanted to prove myself to my mom. So I went in there and I did it flawlessly. And that has always been a gift that my mom was able to give to me, to be able to publicly speak, whether that's impromptu or scripted, and to use at any time. If you have nothing else, you have that skill. Um, so being selected as a speaker, it truly did feel like, wow, I all the work that I put in into public speaking has paid off. That first day, I think my family, my friends, we were all excited. But as you know, right, that day goes into many days, and now you're one with yourself. Um, I think the another feeling that I had when I was by myself was that I didn't feel as if I stacked up to the people that I normally have seen TED Talks and do TEDx's. Um, I always, through college and then even before then, I used to watch TED Talks for inspiration. And I always seen people that was very, very well off, very accomplished. I mean, we're talking PhDs and a long resume of accomplishments. And for me, I thought to myself, wow, like, how do I fit into that? How do I and that's another piece of self-doubt, right? Even though I've done the work and I proved myself to be in this elite space, I still felt as if like, hey, do I have the experience to be an expert? Do I have a story worth people listening to or hearing? Um, and it took a while for me to get over that feeling and to build myself up and say, no, I was meant to be here. I'm here. I was selected. I was nominated. I went through the whole process. It was a very rigorous process. I'm meant to be here just like everybody else.
I think you speak to an experience that every single person selected feels. And no matter how notable, whether someone's completely notable for many years or a novice in their field, there is that self-doubt. And it's one of those things, particularly when you get to a rehearsal day and you start looking around, you're like, oh my gosh, should I be here? And you quickly realize every single person is feeling the exact same way. And what I think is really beautiful about TED and TEDx, it truly is democratic in that no matter who you are, you have an idea. And if you have an idea that's worth spreading, then there's a place for you on that stage. So, you get that and you're excited and you're feeling validated as well as a bit unsure, but then the real work began. And so, what was the process like for you? Because I don't think people realize it's not just like, hey, you're selected, here's the date, show up, do it. Tell us a little bit. What did you have to go through during those months? What were some of the challenges too, and how did you overcome them?
Right. So, of course, you have to go through the ethics committee and send your proposal. I know they also asked for recent public speaking engagements that you have done. And in that moment, right, of having to put down what you're going to say and then to show that you are actually qualified to do this, you have an idea that's worth spreading. Um, that felt a little nerve-wracking at first, because I thought to myself, on paper, are they able to see the vision? Are they able to see the story? Are they able to feel it like how I feel it? Because the story was real for me. It actually happened in my life. Um, are they going to look at this committee of people who some may know me, some may not, and say, I like that. I think that will fit into our lineup. Um, but then when they got back and said that that is something that they would love and they would appreciate to hear, now, right, you have to actually take that small segment and then make it into a full story. And I remember, with you and we spoke a lot through those months of preparing for this. I remember that very first draft that I wrote for TEDx and for this event. Um, I was way off. I remember you reaching back out to me like, hey, you should look at a couple of TED Talks, you should read over a couple things. And it was so funny to me that I have seen so many TED Talks prior to this moment. And I don't know why that didn't in that first draft it didn't translate my experience and what I've seen translate on paper. And I think we had so many iterations of this one story. Um, you know, I always was impromptu when I spoke. I never actually had to write a script and remember the script and read off the script. I never had that experience until this moment. There's a difference, I think, in you publicly speaking to now you coming into a professional public speaking event and being considered a global TEDx speaker and professionalism. It's just a different thing. Um, and I also didn't know how to take a lifetime experience and compress it into 15 minutes or less. Um, I think you, as a coach, did a great job with um, highlighting what it is that's important, right? What can stay, what can go, right? Because this story could have lasted 45 minutes, but our goal was to get it down as quick as short as possible, um, so that this can qualify under the 15 minutes. And I think even with that, it took a lot of I always had to feel like, all right, we're making progress. We're making progress. I am confident this is gonna work itself out. And you were with me every step of the way and always gave me some professional advice as to like how this goes, how this is going to sound, how will this specific segment of your story sound, what not to say, what are some things that like you should highlight or emphasize. That was important. That was important for me to know, and it's something that I now know forever. And all the things that you taught me in those months, I take with me whenever I publicly speak, or even when I'm teaching a public speaking course. I'm always telling my students, like, hey, make emphasis here, highlight here. This is how the story should sound. This is how you hit your key points from beginning to end, so that people can understand your story without getting lost in the sauce. I think if it wasn't for you in those moments and through those months, I think everybody would have been lost in the sauce. In my original draft, they would have been like, wait a minute, what was the moral of this? Um, and I just want to say thank you.
Oh gosh, no, thank you. The beauty of being a TEDx coach is we have this incredible privilege of you, helping our speakers tell the best version of what they want to say. And as a coach, it's not our words, it's not our thoughts, it's yours. And it's helping a speaker craft just the most compelling version of what they want to say. And I give you so much credit too, because as a speaker, especially as a speaker, and many are that kind of speak ad hoc, it's from the heart, it's right off the chest. It can be a very new concept, the idea that you have to craft something and then someone's going to look into it and actually critique it and give feedback and offer support in that way. And it's a whole different sort of animal. And the thing that we always hope everyone takes from it is, and we say this up front, the story you think you're telling today may not be the story that you're actually going to hit the stage with. And because the months that you're working on it are such a journey of exploration, of discovery, of going deep. And sometimes speakers don't want to go that deep. They don't want to have to face what's behind what they're saying. And you were courageous, you were open, and you were willing to really think about what you were saying and why. And that is hard. It's very different than what you expected. And I applaud the work you put into it.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, it's and like you said, it's a lot of emotions. You actually have to put yourself back into the moment of the story. You have to feel it. You have to laugh. You have to cry. You have to, you know, make joy of certain moments. You have to feel the entire story so that it translates into the broader world. So that when people see it and they listen to the story, they also feel the same feelings that you have. Um, And I think throughout this month, I had those points at each time, each step of the way. I had moments where I would cry about certain things. I would laugh about certain things. I would make certain comments, say, wow, that really happened. Um, just so that I can feel the story, in its raw and authentic way, and that also my audience can as well.
Did you feel like there was a lot of self-discovery for you along the way?
100%. 100%. Um, the best way to describe it is you're having a therapy session with paper, right? You're now having to take what was in your head and some of your story and some of what you experienced, you try to push back into your brain because you may not want to think about it often or think about it at all because it may be uncomfortable. And like you said, it's vulnerability. But now you're creating a story, so you have to bring those moments to the front. Um, and I definitely 100%. Hmm.
I think too, one of the very special things about when you're a TEDx speaker and you're working with a coach too is I think we often emphasize what the self-discovery, the learning is along the way for the speaker, but it's such a lesson for the coaches as well along the way. We learn so much about voice and tone and emphasis and what is authentic to the speaker because we're each such, unique individuals and everyone's talk is too. And, I've been doing this for about 13 years now. And for me, what's just so incredulous each time is the experience I get to have, the trust that you offered. And it's an incredible journey for me as a speaker coach. And I know I'm speaking for all of the folks that I've worked with as speaker coaches. It's a gift to us each time too, and a huge learning experience. So thank you. So you worked and you worked at this and you did such a tremendous job. Finally, it's showtime. And now generally there's a full rehearsal day. All the speakers go through that. Your schedule didn't permit that. So you kind of had the added pressure. Fortunately, you were coming home. You were coming home to SNHU, a place you knew so well and felt comfortable at, but you did a run through before the actual event started. So how are you feeling when you did your run through versus when you actually were speaking?
Right. So um I'm coming back to SNU, and I've met everybody, right? I've seen everybody that has been a mentor to me, has been a professor, has been a coach to me. And we're having fun, we're going out to eat, we're doing the whole thing, and they all know me for my public speaking and how good I am at that. Um, and I remember hitting that first run. Um, I was so dry and so stale in this auditorium. And even in that moment when, because I think we did it just a couple hours before I was supposed to go on,
Mhm.
um, I had to think to myself like, "Whoa, why did that happen?" And I know it was you and the rest of the team were the only people in the auditorium. And I remember getting off the stage and saying to myself, I know they're thinking, what was that? Right? Like we selected this person to come and do this TEDx, and I had I was nervous. Um, I didn't realize how the auditorium will look when I'm on there. And I remember when I got on the stage to do the dry run, it was so bright in the auditorium. So one of the things that I do when I get ready for a public speaking engagement is I go into my bathroom and I turn off the lights. Turn off the lights and I read my script in the dark. It helps me to remember uh, what I'm going to say. And even if I don't say exactly what's on paper, which a lot of times you go, of course, um, I have a stronger memory of doing that in the dark. It feels like I'm one with myself. So I go on the stage, and the lights are on, and it's super bright, and I felt uncomfortable because that's not what I practiced or was ready for. Um, and I remember after I did the dry run, everybody was coming and they were like giving me advice, like, "Hey, listen, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to move, you got to, span the room." And I just was like, "Whoa, whoa, that was not good. Um, what am I gonna do?" Right? I was nervous, I was sweating. So what I did was I went to the bathroom. I went to the bathroom. There wasn't a lock on the door, but I wish I was able to lock the door, and I turned the lights off. And I did exactly what I prepared for in that moment to get my confidence up. Um, and I think if I didn't think to go and prepare again right before I get on for the official run, it would have been a lot different. It would have been exactly what that dry run looked like, the stale, the no personality. I had no personality on there. It was as if I was just a robot. So,
Hey, it was a whole new thing. I remember saying to you, make sure you smile and show your personality.
yes,
And
yes.
you sure did. You sure did. And so, and it took a little bit for the talk to be released. We live streamed that day, and you were able to have feedback. You had family in the audience too. So you had that support as well as quite a few people from the SNHU community. But so when your talk was released, and I mean, the minute you did your talk, you were a TEDx speaker, but now your talk's released. You're seen globally now. You're a TEDx speaker official. What did that feel like? And like, what did that mean to you, especially where it all went down at SNHU and you're an alum?
It was magical. Um, it was really magical. What I would say is that when I hit the main stage and I got the comfort, um and the difference between the dry run and the main stage was that when I got to the main stage, it was pitch black, right? So I wasn't able to see anybody in the stands, so that made me very comfortable. And then when the TEDx was released and it was, edited and published, um I had to think, what did I just do in life? Um is it something that is self-centered, or is this bigger than me? And what I realized was this was bigger than me. This moment was an opportunity for me to give alumni opportunities to hit this stage. It was important for me as a young Black man in his 20s. I've always seen TED talkers and TEDx speakers being older. And like I said, with a longer resume, Doctor this and Esquire that. And to see and to know that I had the opportunity to really open up the gates for young people who may not have that long list of things that they have done, but people believe in them. I realized how big it was, and I realized, wow, like I really, really made an impact on the SNU community as an alum. I'm hoping that later on down the road, more alum will be invited to this stage. Um, Being a young Black man, knowing that, right, there's other young Black kids out there that may not have thought about this opportunity or this journey, but knowing now that that is an opportunity and journey that is open for you. Um, and then also my family, right? My family being able to now say, we are accomplished, right? We are accomplished at something. Um, it's just major. And even still to this day, it's major. Um, People know me before I know them, right? Even at job interviews, whether it's job interviews, whether that's dating, now it's not hard to find me on the internet. It's not hard to know who I am and what I'm about. Um, and I would just say it's just been magical. It's something that also like you can't go back. Um, it's something that's there forever. So I had to get used to and adjusted to this level of recognition. And to know that in every room now, in every space, and at every table, I am viewed as a professional. I'm viewed as global. I'm viewed as an expert. Has just been it's been magical for sure.
I bet. And we do often hear, and we touched upon this, that, the process of becoming a TEDx speaker, it as you go through that journey, it does change you. How did it affect you?
Mm. So one of my teacher friends always says this. She always says, sometimes you have to touch grass. You just always have to touch grass. Um, I think it changed for myself as an individual. It changed how I approach different tasks and different opportunities in life. I now am more sure of myself than I ever was, no matter what the task or the opportunity is. Um, but I think it also changes how I view um, every different person's perspective and their own story. I'm able to like zone in to people's story and figure out like what is the real moral and what is like what really touched them the most about this story. Knowing that, right, even that story that one of my students has told me or my family or my friend has told me can be a TED talk or a TEDx talk one day, just like mine was. It just opens up my perspective. It opens up my mind to where I value everybody's experience and perspective way more now than I did prior to.
Because we all have a story. What sort of advice might you have for others that would envision themselves perhaps one day hitting the TEDx stage?
Number one advice I would say is shake hands with everybody. Um, I want to give credit to Dr. Shanita Williams, um, who was the first Black professor that I had at SNU, and the first person I've ever met to do a TED Talk or a TEDx. And I know now she's a two-time TEDx talker. Um, at the time when I had her as a professor, she had just done one. And I remember I believe it was a communications course. Um, I went into the communication course and instantly her and I just locked eyes. And when the class was over, I shook hands with Dr. Shanita Williams and I said, I learned so much about you. Prior to when you get into a course, you usually look up who the professor is, how they are. And I watched your TEDx talk. And I remember her saying to me, would you want to do one day? And I said, I'm not sure, but I think if the opportunity came, I would take it. And she said, okay. She said, all right. And we shook hands. Um, and time went on now, right? So I forgot about that moment as time went on. Now I've graduated. I'm, in banking now. I'm doing so many other things. And she reaches out to me on LinkedIn and says, hey, this is big main stage is here, right? Remember we spoke in the class and I said, yeah, I remember that conversation. I remember us having that conversation. And she said, would you like to do this? Would you like to be a TEDx speaker and come back to your stomping grounds, come back home and really put on for alumni, really be able to put your story out there? And I said, yes. Um, and if it wasn't for Dr. Shanita Williams as one being the example and the role model for what I can one day be, but then also being able to put my hat in the ring and connecting me with you, Pam, and the ethics committee and the TEDx, everybody, so that I can have this opportunity, things would have been a lot different, but I'm glad I had that. So my advice for everybody is to shake hands with everybody. Just when you meet a person, you don't know who that person is. You don't know who they know, or what they're about. Always shake hands and make friends.
I love the interconnectedness of all of this. Shanita was another of the speakers I've coached, and she had brought you up to me as well. And you, again, made quite the impression on Shanita as much as she did on you. And I think that, you're illustrating too the value of the connections you make and what you can learn from each person and how we can lift each other up. And that's so important. It's recognizing what others are saying, as you noted. What's their story? What do you think they'd like to share? How can you help them get there? And I think that's so important, as well as your willingness not only to shake hands and meet people, but to recognize the humanity in others too, and be open when an opportunity comes your way, because you could have gotten the nomination information and been like, I don't know. Is this for me? And, my life's here now. What do I want to do? Is this a stage I want to go to? And I'm so glad you did, as I'm sure many others would tell you. So what has some of the feedback been you've gotten on your talk and its topic?
I think a lot of people that have reached out to me about my topic, whether that's friends or family, they wanted to know more, and they wanted to know exactly the steps that I took to resolve that feeling of not being accepted. Um, Everybody says that the speak was good, it was great. Was always positive feedback on it all. I think some of the other things that people ask for, like if you were to change certain parts of the story, were there any that you would change? And I think there definitely are a couple parts where I looked at and I said, I could have said that differently, or I could have worded that differently, or this differently. But I think even in its full form and how we put it out, I mean, 31,000 views. I think it's as good as it got. Um, and I think we're our own worst critics, right? We're our own worst critics. Even though I have more confidence in myself and I don't seek to be within the crowd, or within a club, I still have some moments of, right, self-doubt. I still have some moments of where I'm hypercritical on what I say and what I do. And I don't think that's something that I ever go away. I think I will always watch my talk and feel as if I could have done better, or I could have done something, um, either in the beginning or the end, or even in the middle. Something could have been different in the way I approached that. Um, but I take it all in, and it's good. Critical feedback for yourself and from others is essential to how you grow in this world.
If it represents your point of view at a moment in time, and as you evolve, your way of looking at it too evolves. But I know you and I have discussed this since, and one of the things I really cherish is our friendship has remained since that time. And I absolutely love the conversations we've had. But I know you've reflected to me that in the aftermath of your talk, it also made you kind of look at what you were doing professionally, what your goals were. Did they align with what your long-term goals were? And so tell us a little bit about that, how that kind of changed your perspective and really made you focus in a different way.
Right. So at the time of the TED Talk, I was in banking. I was in corporate banking, and even though I went to school for business, I think there's a big difference between what you study and what you actually practice. And I was making a lot more money than I'm making now, but I wasn't happy, right? I was in a cubicle. I was pushing paper. I was looking at Microsoft Excel all day. I realized that the environment It was quiet all the time. It was just, head down, do the work. And I felt as if my life that I had when I was in college and even my life um, leading up to this TED Talk wasn't the same as what my life is in my profession. So I was able to get the skills and the experience of being in banking and being in corporate America, but I knew that I had to be somewhere where I can influence young minds. I had to be somewhere where I can be a role model to somebody, where I can change, I can shape somebody's mind and how they view life in the world. I think that was essential to me. I went from being a diversity agent uh, in college. SNU really valued that role, similar to like how a school would value a Division I basketball player. I was sent to many different states and cities to speak in front of people. I was, in Cambridge. I was a speaker uh, headlining for Yusef Salam of the Exonerated Five. I met so many people, Debbie Irving, Dr. Eddie Moore, um, and I got comfortable with that lifestyle, being in the spotlight, being able to spread ideas and talk and rub shoulders with people that were also open to these ideas. To now being in corporate America where it's just work, 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 work. All we care about is the deadline. So that made me get into teaching. I was getting my graduate degree at John Jay College of Criminal Justice. And again, right, shaking hands, I shook hands with somebody who worked for Teach for America. She was a recruiter for Teach for America and said, I think you should be a teacher. I think you can really do a good thing in the classroom. And so I had to go through that process. And I ended up being a teacher in Philly, in the school district of Philadelphia. And even though teaching is a profession that a lot of people look down on, or they don't get the amount of respect that they should, I think that I'm better in this role and more purposeful in this role, being able to be student facing and to help students navigate some of the things that they're going through in the way that I wanted that mentor when I was in high school, middle school, and elementary school. Somebody who looked like me, somebody who comes from the same struggles as I come from, and they can give me advice. And even if it's like not advice, because I have some students that are very self-sufficient, just being in the same presence as each other, they say iron sharpens iron. So um, I'm just elated. I'm happy.
I've no doubt you're influencing and learning so much along the way too.
I
So what's next for you? Because you are very goal oriented.
Loaded questions, loaded question. Professionally, I'm looking to be in, educational leadership. Um, I even thought about at some point coming back to SNU and teaching at SNU or being in a leadership capacity at SNU so that I can also further things and further my legacy there. Um, Personally, I plan to start a podcast in the summer. I want to start a podcast to where I can interview other teachers in
Oh, that'd
Philly.
be excellent.
Yeah, yeah, and spread their stories, right? It'll be a mini TEDx where they can come and they talk about what their experience was like in high school or middle school. Um, and yeah, I think besides professionally, and personally, I really just want to make sure that I'm well. I want to make sure that I feel good in everything that I do. I want to meet more people like myself, young people too. I've had a student that asked me about the process of being a TEDx speaker, and I'm pretty sure they're watching right now. So I got my eyes on him. I got my eyes on him, and hopefully I can coach him into getting an opportunity similar to this one.
Oh, that's fantastic. We have a few questions too in the chat. First, though, in case you haven't seen the chat, Demita Ferner, who was a speaker alongside you, sends you her best wishes, saying how great it was and that she is able to be here today and how incredibly proud she is of you, and she loves seeing you shine.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Joshua Becker wanted to know, what advice would you give to first-time speakers?
My advice would be deep breaths for sure. Take some deep breaths. But really hone in on the message that you want people to resonate with. Your story is important, but your story, right, is also, like I said, it's long, and it's something that can span. If it's anything like mine, it spanned through many stages of your life. So figure out what's most pivotal about that, right? And make that the centerpiece of your story. Really think critically, right? And thinking outside of how it shows up on paper, right? Being able to sit in on your own emotions and your own feelings and pull out exactly what it is that you felt or what it is that makes this story important to you. Makes it a better story for people, and it makes them feel as if they are not just listening to the story, but they are a part of the story. So that would be my advice.
So our own Matt DePiero is wondering, what was it like to be part of this group of speakers? I know you weren't able to be at rehearsal, but you were part of some calls that we had, some group calls as we prepped. And then on event day itself, like, what did that feel like?
Yeah, so I think for the first time, the first time I definitely felt like I belonged where I was supposed to be. Um, Jada had brought, Dr. Jada had brought and I, who was a chief diversity officer at SNHU. She was my boss prior to this TEDx talk, and she was one of the speakers. And it felt different um, to have been, right, her subordinate and so speak, right, being her employee to now being somewhat of an equal, and sharing our stories and kind of talking about what it is that we find most important and pivotal to put out in this opportunity. I think everybody that was in the lineup felt as if like my story, your story has to be bomb, right? Because we don't know if we're going to get this opportunity again. We have to make sure that our stories can reach and they can go out there. One of those really stories that touch your heart. So I was glad. I was excited to be around and to be with people that I looked up to. I spent a lot of my, years looking up to Jada, looking up to um the work that she's done as a chief diversity officer. And to now see it all come full circle, it made me feel as if I was accomplished. I was somebody that was qualified and somebody that was worthy of being there. So she also played a very big part in a lot of my success throughout the years. So I just want to give her a shout out for that if she's watching.
She is here and said, "You are always an equal, my friend." One other person that's on this call too is Dr. Lynn Moore, your middle school principal.
Hi, Dr. Moore. How are you? Thank you. Thank you.
I'm going to make sure that all of these comments, and there's some wonderful ones in the chat, that they are shared with you post this event. One of the questions too was, how does sharing your story in the TEDx stage impact your sense of belonging, your own sense of belonging? And did it shift how you begin to see yourself in the community with others?
Yes. Yes. Um, so you go from uh sometimes in your life you feel as if you're not heard, right? And As a kid, I was very misunderstood, and I've always felt like my voice wasn't heard. Um, and getting the opportunity to put my voice out there on the professional stage. Now, when I'm with and I'm in the community, I'm in a position to where, right, I can empower others and let them know, like, hey, I'm listening. Other people are listening. Your voice is worth it. Whether that's them having a crisis in the home or them just feeling as if um, things aren't progressing, right? I'm able to put myself in their shoes. Um, Leadership is compassion, being compassionate and you know having empathy is important, and I think that has definitely affected um, how I interact with my community. But I also think my community feels like this is a win for us all, right? This is a win for us all. We have something that um, is there. It's in the world. It may not be something that you can put on the wall, but it is something that is there. It's permanent, and it's an accomplishment that we have made as a unit. Everybody at SNHU and in my life played a part in how I show up now in my life, how I showed up then, and the few, very close mentors Dr. Dennis Hill, Caleb Page, Russell Anton, um, Michael from Diversity. Everybody played a part in how I show up now in my community and show up now in my life, even down to how I dress and how I look. Shout out to Dr. Dennis Hill, who um, he was like my stylist in college. Um, One of my first like real speaking engagements, he had like picked out a suit for me, and like we had went to Macy's, got the suit, got everything picked out, and the speaking engagement was in Cambridge, and it kind of resembles what I'm wearing today, and it's stuck with me forever. And shout out to Caleb Page, who definitely brought that sense of like confidence into my life. She was like a mom for me on campus. So I always remember those individuals, and I think in so many ways, um, there's an imprint of them in me forever.
That's fantastic. So often we have seen speakers go on to all kinds of new adventures based on the premise of their original talk. I love that you're thinking of doing a podcast and getting voices out and really expanding on the reach that a teacher's voice and messaging can have. Because as you noted, it's a profession that often does not get valued in the way it most definitely deserves, and then some. And I love the idea that you're going to create some sort of a forum to make that happen. We've seen some of our speakers, including Shanita, go on to write books and really build on that. So when you're thinking about the messaging and the voice and the community you've felt, is there anything else that you're considering, or is the sky the limit?
Sky's the limit. Sky's the limit. I'm right now just really trying to become a better teacher in all around so many aspects. But I think um in my later 30s, I may enter into politics and continue my work as a diversity agent and a activist for social equity and racial equity. I think that is very important right now in the world we're living in the political climate that we're in at the moment. Um, it's all hands on deck. Anybody who has a voice, anybody who has any type of um, global recognition should be in a space to where they can influence others because it's gonna matter. It's gonna matter. It's gonna matter.
I love that. Well, I want to thank you so much for being here today, Bancroft. Anytime I get to see your smiling face and hear you speak it's a good day in my life, and I'm sure others are feeling the same. I'm going to turn it back over to Matt and Kyle.
Thank you so much.
Bancroft, thank you so much for being here today. I think I could speak for everyone here in the crowd that we can't. We've really enjoyed your talk. I can't believe we got the chance to revisit it with you today, and I know it was something that we all really enjoyed. So thank you for being here today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, and I hope to see you all again soon.